3 years. For 3 long, brutal years, not a single drop of rain has touched this soil. The kingdom of Israel, once flowing with milk and honey, has become a graveyard of broken dreams in dried-up rivers. The skies are like brass, the ground is dust, and the people are dying. The land is divided. King Ahab sits on the throne, but it is Queen Jezebel, daughter of a foreign tyrant, who truly rules. She has imported her gods, her priests, and her culture. The ancient faith of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has been outlawed. The prophets of God have been hunted, slaughtered, driven into hiding in caves. But today, the silence breaks. Today, the debate ends. On the wind-swept peak of Mount Carmel, one man, wild-haired, weather-worn, clothed in camel hair and leather, has done the unthinkable. He has challenged an entire empire to a duel. One prophet against 450. One God against the most popular religion in the kingdom. The stakes? The very soul of a nation. This is the story of fire on the summit. The day the heavens themselves chose a side. His name was Elijah, the Tishbite. Few prophets in history are as fierce or as enigmatic. He appeared from nowhere, declared a drought in the name of the Lord, and vanished for 3 years while the kingdom collapsed. Now he stands before King Ahab, the man who has ordered his execution, and proposes the most outrageous public spectacle in biblical history. Gather all of Israel, Elijah commands. Bring the 450 prophets of Baal who eat at Jezebel's table. Bring the 400 prophets of Asherah. We will meet on Mount Carmel. And there, before the eyes of every man, woman, and child in this kingdom, we will settle the question once and for all. Who is the real God? Ahab agrees, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps out of arrogance. He is certain his prophets, backed by all the gold and prestige of Jezebel's empire, cannot lose. The day arrives. Thousands gather on the slopes of Carmel. The crowd is restless, divided, hungry. Elijah climbs to the summit and turns to face them with a question that has echoed through 3,000 years. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him. Silence. The crowd does not answer. They cannot answer. They want to keep their feet in both worlds. Then Elijah lays out the test. He calls for 2 altars, 2 bulls. Cut them in pieces, lay them on the wood. But here is the twist. No fire is to be lit. The God who answers by fire from heaven, Elijah declares, he is the true God. The crowd murmurs. The prophets of Baal smile. This is a test they cannot lose. Baal, pronounced Baal, was the storm god, the lord of thunder, lightning, and rain. Lightning was his signature. Fire from the sky was his domain. Elijah, in his brilliance, has challenged the thunder god at his own game, in the middle of a 3-year drought that Baal supposedly controlled. The prophets of Baal go first. 450 men in colorful robes, gold ornaments, and elaborate ceremonial garments. They prepare their altar, they place the bull, and then the show begins. From morning until noon, Mount Carmel becomes a madhouse. The prophets dance, they scream, they chant, they circle the altar in a frenzy of religious ecstasy. The crowd watches in fascinated horror, but the sky remains like brass, silent, empty, no spark, no smoke, no fire. And then, around midday, when the sun is at its hottest and their throats are raw, Elijah does something that has shocked theologians for 3 millennia. He mocks them. This is where Elijah deploys a weapon deadlier than any sword: sarcasm. "Shout louder," he calls across the mountain. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or away on a journey. Maybe he is fast asleep and needs to be awakened." The prophets of Baal explode in fury. They cut themselves with swords and spears, their blood pouring down their robes. a desperate ritual to compel their God to respond. They prophesy in trance, foaming at the mouth, but the sky remains silent. By mid-afternoon, the 450 are exhausted, bleeding, hoarse, defeated by the very silence they tried to break. The greatest religious movement in the kingdom has been reduced to a circus of self-mutilation. And still, nothing. Now it is Elijah's turn. He does not scream. He does not dance. He moves with the calm of a man who has already won. He gathers the people close. "Come here," he says, and he begins to repair the altar of the Lord, the ancient altar that had been torn down during Jezebel's persecution. He selects 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel, a silent reminder that this is not just about fire. This is about identity, heritage, the covenant. He arranges the wood, he cuts the bull, he places the offering on the altar. And then, Elijah does something that will define the entire moment. He turns to the crowd and orders them, "Fill 4 large jars with water, pour it over the offering and the wood." The people obey, confused. Then he says it again, "Do it a second time." They do. Do it a third time. 12 large jars of water. In the middle of a 3-year drought, water itself is precious, are poured over the altar. The wood is soaked. The bull is dripping. The stones glisten. The trench around the altar overflows. Humanly speaking, fire is now physically impossible. Elijah is not just asking for a miracle. He is removing every possible natural explanation. No spark from a stone, no hidden ember, no accidental flame. If anything burns on this altar today, only one being in the universe could have done it. The mountain falls silent. The crowd holds its breath. Even the prophets of Baal stand frozen, watching. Elijah steps forward. He lifts his eyes to the sky, and he prays a prayer so short, so simple, so devoid of theatrics, that it stands in violent contrast to the chaos of the morning. "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." The response was not a spark. It was a cosmic strike. In a flash, fire fell from a clear evening sky, a pillar of white-hot, brilliant flame descending from the heavens with the sound of a thunderclap. The fire did not merely light the wood, it consumed everything. It burned the bull, it burned the wood, it burned the 12 stones, solid rock vaporized in an instant. It burned the dust to the ground, and then, impossibly, it licked up every drop of water in the trench. The mountain shook, the crowd collapsed to the ground, faces in the dust, and from thousands of throats rose a single, thunderous cry that echoed across the valley. "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" The contest was over. The verdict was undeniable. And the prophets of Baal, exposed as frauds, were seized that very evening. But the story is not finished. Elijah looks at King Ahab and says, "Eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." Ahab obeys. Elijah climbs higher up the mountain, bows down with his face between his knees, and begins to pray. He sends his servant to look toward the sea. Nothing. He prays again, sends the servant again. Nothing. 6 times he prays. 6 times, nothing. But on the 7th time, the servant returns with news. A cloud, small as a man's hand, rising from the sea. That tiny cloud became a wall of black storm. The sky darkened, the wind rose, and then, for the first time in 3 years, rain. The fire proved God's power, but the rain proved His mercy. As the first droplets struck the parched earth, the 3-year curse was lifted. Life returned to the kingdom. Elijah's story has reached us across 3,000 years, not because he was the loudest or the strongest or even the most successful. By the very next chapter, he is hiding in a cave, exhausted and ready to die. His story has lasted because of one simple truth. God does not respond to noise. He responds to faith. The 450 had numbers. They had wealth. They had political power. They had a queen on their side, and they could not produce a single spark. Elijah had nothing except a willingness to soak the altar before asking for the fire, to make the impossible more impossible, to remove every safety net so that the only explanation left was God Himself. What are the soaked altars in your life right now? The dreams that look impossible, the prayers that have gone unanswered for 3 years, the fires that refuse to fall. Sometimes the path to God's miraculous power is not making things easier. It is allowing them to become harder, until the only one who can intervene is Him. Trust the process, soak the altar, and wait for the fire. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs reminding that the silence is not the end. Subscribe for more journeys into the most powerful stories ever told. And in the comments, tell us, what is the soaked altar in your life today? Thank you for watching.